What's up, prospects? Appreciate y'all joining in. We're on episode 2 of Turn by Turn, and we do have Coach Mandy Baldwin back to us from the dead, here to join in on episode 2. So we got 6:30 on the dot, so we are going to give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. While we're waiting, go ahead, let us know you're here. Make sure you like. Make sure you share so that other people can join on. Make sure that you comment, not just to let us know you're here and where you're viewing from, but make sure that you go ahead and comment, any questions that you have throughout the show. But again, we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I knew my man Gil was going to be the first one on.
I thought he had practiced.
They ended up Texas Hawks. They ended up playing a makeup game yesterday, so it's free to roll. We got Mike Knott over in Texas, and there's the family. What's up, Nikki? Our softball guru down in Florida. There we go. We got the slapping guru on. I think we're ready to roll. You ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Appreciate all y'all being on. I know there's some of y'all that are going to be watching this a little bit later than everybody else, obviously, and it's actually something that we've been thinking about, with Tuesdays being the best day initially, but then, of course, during the spring having high school ball and most of the schools are going to have high school games on Tuesdays, and so naturally, it's something that we're going to figure out. If you have an opinion as to whether we should have it on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, comment on this video and let us know. Right now, being totally honest, being totally transparent, we're torn between do we miss some of our people, some of our viewership on Tuesdays by doing it during high school season when high school games are going to take place, or do we do it on Wednesdays and lose some of our viewers that are going to be in church? Maybe Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday isn't the answer. Maybe it's the time of the day. Maybe later on in the day is the answer. I don't know. But if you have an opinion or you have a suggestion on it, make sure that you comment on this video and tell us, and that way later on me and Coach Mandy can roll through it and everything. Those of y'all that don't know, obviously we plan on having Coach Mandy on with us last time, and she ended up coming down with the flu. Those of y'all that don't know, and Mandy we laughed about it earlier because I actually get it wrong half the time, but Coach Mandy is now an NSR scout that's here they're in Memphis, and she obviously helps us cover a lot of stuff coast to coast, but she's there in Memphis. But what Coach Mandy brings to the table for us, at NSR, obviously not an NSR show, but for NSR, not just NSR, but myself, is 15, 18 years of college coaching. Where she spent her last couple of years at Christian Brothers over in Memphis, but prior to that, had coached at several different programs. And her knowledge, not just knowledge, but, we see a lot of changes going on right now in college softball, and a lot of changes that are coming up. Mandy has seen those happen over the last 15 to 18 years. So when I see a change, I go, oh my gosh, I need to make sure that I'm all, and I notice she's not panicking, it's because it always happens. And so, did I miss anything about that?
No, I'm just glad I'm healthy and able to be back here with you guys, and excited. There's so much happening in the softball world, and not just recruiting, but just everything out there. You guys have had some really great questions and comments and conversations going on, so I'm excited to see where this really takes us and what topics we get into.
Absolutely. And guys, one of the things you'll hear me refer on this show, now that Mandy's here, you'll hear me a lot of times refer to a conversation that me and Mandy had. And so, as many of y'all know me as a not know it all, but I typically, if I don't know it, I know who to go to find it. 50% of the time or more, it's her, and so you'll hear me refer to a lot of times, even in this show, about a conversation that me and Coach Mandy had, and it's because the material that came out of that was, this is what I knew, this is what I heard, this is what I found as fact, and then Mandy brings a whole different view to it. Again, before we get everything kicked off, and thanks, Amy, make sure that y'all are commenting, make sure you let us know where you're at, where you're viewing from. And again, as we go to jump through some of these things, make sure that you're commenting your questions. We're going to do our best to get to all of them, but again, some of the questions we may end up having to get to later. For every person that asked that one question, there's 20 people who wanted to know the answer to that question. As we stated in a couple of the previous posts on today's show, we're actually going to take a totally different approach. Obviously we have Coach Mandy, so we have a different point of view on some things, but we're also going to have Emily Allard, and she's actually viewing right now. We'll have Emily Allard jump on here in just a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the box rules. We'll talk about I know slapping, Mandy knows slapping. At the same time, when we have a slapping question, Emily is our go-to. Quickly known as the softball guru from coast to coast. So we'll actually have her jump on here in just a little bit. Believe it or not, our first thing that we wanted to make sure and cover with y'all today, Mandy had gotten here a little bit earlier. We were going over some of the stuff that we were going to cover today and making sure that we didn't feel any different or had seen anything different or heard anything different. And as we're talking, we both land on something that had nothing to do with the topics we had laid out. So I don't intend on it being a long topic, but I imagine out of the number of viewers we have right now, probably at least 50% are either travel ball players, recruitable age players, recruitable age parents, or they are travel ball coaches, possibly high school coaches. So I tell you that to tell you this. This is the reason we decided we want to make sure and address something real quick. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, and those of y'all that don't know, like we talked about Mandy's experience in coaching college softball and coaching softball at all levels, those of y'all that don't know, my degree is actually in exercise physiology and biomechanics, in order to be a strength coach. That's actually how I got into softball. And so, contrary to what you're seeing here, I actually do know what I'm talking about when it comes to, the human physiology and biomechanics. And so I tell you that to tell you this. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, and me and Mandy talking about it, all of a sudden I realized it was something she had been thinking about too, is I don't know if it's a lack of knowledge or if it is a lack of emphasis, but proper warm-ups when it comes to whether it's a practice, whether it is a showcase. Coach Mandy was talking about she went to a showcase, just a week ago, and as she gets there and she sees, that the team is over there and the girls are basically going through the motions, but you notice that there's nobody actually warming up. They're doing the stretches, but you can tell that, number one, the culmination of the different types of stretches was not great, and number two, you see the coaches, and just because they didn't know any better, but they're sitting over there talking strategy, possibly doing their lineup, and I noticed it just a couple of days ago. I was in a situation, I was at a facility, and 3 different age groups are there, and I noticed the same thing. The travel ball coaches are over in the corner, and they're talking, and they're doing strategy, and nothing against it, and I get it. They want their girls, you girls should know what stretches y'all are doing, and y'all should be able to follow them without us being around, absolutely. But without supervision, is that the word I'm looking for? Supervision. Like Mandy said, without supervision, it's a good and a bad. The bad thing is 75% of those girls did not warm up properly. 75% of them were just going through the motions. But it also, the good part, as a scout or as a college coach, it allows us to see, I forgot how'd you word it earlier?
It's paying attention to detail. It's how I tell my recruits and kids I talk to and families, I'm watching as a scout or as a former coach, I'm watching how you prepare for the task ahead. Whether it's pitchers warming up or stretching, I want to see that you are taking the time to prepare yourself for the game or the practice. And it all starts with that warm-up. Too many times it is a lack of focus, and I think sometimes coaches get too busy, and at some level, they know what they should be doing. There are some levels where it needs to be reinforced of why they're doing the stretch and how to do the stretch. So taking the time to mentally prepare and physically prepare for the game, I think, that's just one aspect. That tells me a lot. It tells me everything. Why should I stay and watch this kid? Is she preparing herself for the task ahead? It's that detail, attention to detail. And
that was the big thing that me and Mandy ended up following, and I don't remember exactly how we worded it, but like, kids who overachieve at everything. They're kids who, I've got, and I'm not just saying it because Gil is on, but like Lacey Ornelas, that kid gets mad if somebody scores higher than her on a test. Like she sees everything as a competition. She's a flat out freaking competitor. I dig the heck out of that. And it's the same thing when I'm watching stretching, and I see this kid who's not really sitting there yet, I want to see him have fun, and I want to see him, I want to see them enjoy what they're doing. But at the same time, I love seeing that kid who is so zoned in on her warm-up that, she is literally making, by the end of that warm-up, which is another thing, a lot of warm-ups aren't long enough. And those of y'all that we've came and done team workouts with, you probably notice our team warm-up that we do before we work you out and gather metrics, that thing's lasting 20, 25 minutes. And there's a reason for that. Like a lot of the girls, when I go to talking to them, 99% of the stretching they're doing is typically like static stretching. A lot of girls don't understand, like there's three different, you have dynamic, static, and ballistic. Where obviously static is, still, it's where you do something, hold it for 10 seconds or whatever and let it go. Your ballistic, it's kind of like bouncing on a ball. You think of a ball bouncing. So, if you're going wide with your legs and you're reaching down and grabbing the ground at 3 different levels, that's ballistic. Dynamic is kind of where, say you're stepping out into a lunge and doing it with a sunrise in order to stretch your serratus anterior or the fingers or your ribs.
Your ribs.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, but the point being, each one of those serve a very specific purpose. And then at the end of that warm-up, being able to do some things in order to engage your fast-twitch muscle fibers. Like one of my favorites is every girl who does actually run bases, lining them up on the line and having them, I'm going to go into a pitch and then they're going to take off, and little bitty things. And I see a lot of teams doing those, but I don't see a whole lot of emphasis on including all 3 methods of stretching and making sure that they're engaging, top to bottom. And then also having, softball is a fast twitch fiber sport. I mean, let's be honest. That's just the way it is. So if they're not engaging a lot of those, and then all of a sudden they jump into the game, and then all of a sudden they're expecting to be able to fire off, your muscles, same thing, the way I explain to the girls, just like this pin, your muscles are like plastic. And so if I take this pin and I start bending it like this, it's going to snap. However, if I take a lighter and I light this pin, and then I start moving it, it's going to mold the way I want it to because it's warm and more pliable. Your muscles are the same way. Your ligaments and tendons are the same way. So even though it's a minor topic, I want y'all to understand, like, I think me and Mandy spent an hour talking about this earlier, just in the sense that it allowed us to identify some things. I watched a kid who may have went 1 for 3, and it was just a double, and she had a beautiful swing, don't get me wrong, and the kid's talented. But I noticed from the beginning of them showing up to the very end, and I mean including warm-ups, including at the very end, the kid did all the little things right. She warmed up right. She was zoned in on her warm-up. At the end, the game's over, and they're sitting down, and their coach is giving them the lecture, the post-game talk and stuff. She's up on one knee, and she is making eye contact with that coach the entire time instead of sitting back, leaning back like this, like, I got to unbutton my pants, kind of thing. Like you ate too much at CC's Pizza or something. And no, that wasn't an endorsement of CC's Pizza. But long story short to that, pay attention to the small things and understand,
pay attention to the small things because at the end of the day, every small thing becomes a big thing. It's a domino effect. If you can take care of your glove, then that tells us one thing. If you can take care of your body, that tells us another. If you're stretching properly and you're warming up, all those little details, how you handle your glove, that could be a whole other topic, but Paying attention to detail, because it tells us so much about who you are as a person and a player.
Absolutely. And that was another thing, that like Mandy talked about, those kids who are taking their warm-up seriously, those are typically the kids that aren't tossing their glove at the end. They're walking over there and placing their glove the right way. They're making sure that they're taking care of their stuff. If you're a travel coach or a high school coach, not pointing the fingers at anybody, just, start paying attention to it. If you are a player, don't necessarily think, oh, my coach doesn't take warm-up seriously, so, that they're a horrible person. It's not that. It's not, that you're at a point, if you're at a recruitable age right now, you're at an age that you need to start thinking about you. So just because your coach isn't sitting there going, you're not doing that right, doesn't mean you shouldn't be focused to make sure you're doing what you need to do, not only to keep yourself safe, but to make sure that you're performing at your highest. And so, I miss anything about that?
I don't think so. No, that's pretty much what we talked about in a nutshell.
Gotcha. And so, one of the other things, which a real quick topic that it originally wasn't on our outline. It wasn't on our plan, but we all know a couple of months ago, when you had the recruiting rules come out, or the proposed recruiting rules from the college, you had that come out. Everybody was posting, to social media. Everybody had an opinion about it. Oh, I heard this. Oh, I heard that. And if it's posted on Facebook, it's got to be golden and true, right? A frozen hot dog flying a spaceship that abducted my firstborn child. Whoa. That's got to be real. So, just and no, I have no clue where that reference came from, but those are the kind of conversations me and Mandy have. That's why we work so well. But once you get past that, it starts with that. Then, as me and Mandy are talking about, you start seeing there's these high-profile coaches that are, we'll say being released, from their positions, and all of a sudden you've got people who don't hesitate to go post about it, comment about it, and there is no down the middle. They're either, oh, they're the worst person in the world, and then you have the other ones, oh, you don't know them like we do, this, that, and the other, and I'm not pointing any fingers. We're not pointing any fingers. But like me and Mandy talked about, that's the way college coaching is. You never actually know the real story.
There's always three sides. There's a story over here, and their story, and then there's the truth.
Yeah.
So it's a situation. I think sometimes it's all relative from our own perspective. Parents are going to see it one way, players might see it another, and coaches see it a completely another. So, it's. And
that was one thing. Like it offended me. Some of the stuff I was reading, because, here lately there's been a couple of higher profile coaches that I was close with, that people were taking a very extremely negative approach on Facebook, and I realized I was taking a personal route reading it as opposed to a professional route. And so as I'm reading, I'm like, well, they don't know him like I do, or whatever, but then I realized Mandy takes it on an even deeper level, because some of these coaches are coaches that she's, coached alongside or coached against, over the years. And so it's even more personal to her, where she can validate some of them. Yeah, everything they said is right, but on some of them, it's, the point to that is you have, whether it's the early recruiting or whether it's the high-profile coaches being released, everybody, opinions are like noses. Everybody has one. Everybody has one, and they can all smell. Did you like that?
I like that.
That was clean. I'm keeping it PG, guys. So, but the trick to it is, social media could provide such a great avenue for discussion, but the problem is, they're treating it like politics and taking it, well, you must be a Democrat, and so I'm a Republican, and so this is like Bloods and Crips throwing down in the alley, it's not like that just because this coach or that coach. So whether it's early recruiting or it's a high-profile coach being released and it being a little bit of controversial as to why it happened, here's the thing. You never actually know the situation, and you never actually know the details. So beware, and I'm telling all of y'all this, beware of having such strong opinions and thinking that it is okay to go put it out there for the public to read.
Like you said, I think it's one thing if you want to start a conversation and talk about it. But it's another to go out there and just either bash a coach or completely support him, or bash these early commits and their parents or the coaches. there's all these different sides and there's all these many perspectives. So it's a conversation that can be had versus you're right, I'm wrong. Let's argue to understand versus arguing to be right.
It is like me and Mandy were talking about, like, and that brings up a very good point, like that the sixth grader. It's something that's unprecedented, something that's never taken place
in any sport.
And we see all of a sudden everybody is going haywire on social media. And I know we should really avoid talking about certain coaches or certain programs and stuff, on the show. But you have people who are going negative about the UF program and about Coach Walton and, they should never do this, that, and the other. What they don't understand, number one, this kid really is legit. I can vouch, kid's legit. Number two, everybody is going public on social media about downing that program and that coach for being the first person to commit a sixth grader, but nobody is saying anything about these other 8 or 9 programs, from what I understand, that offer this kid.
Right.
Here's the thing.
They weren't the only ones who did.
You're basically bashing him in the Florida program for winning at recruiting. And I'm not saying, that it was winning because he got somebody on. I'm saying he was competing against 8 or 9 of the other top 10 programs, and he won. He won on this kid. So because of that, you try to paint him in a negative light. And I get it. Some of the people said, it's because, there had been more frequency, of younger commits and this, that, and the other. If you take a look real quick online, I think Coach Walton knows how to pick them.
I think so. I think he's won a couple.
Could be wrong, but I think he knows how to pick them. And so while you all may have an opinion about it, trust me, I am one of those that has an opinion about everything.
Nikki said she saw her bomb at first, faster to first, so there's a lot of scouts out there vouching that this kid is legit.
Yeah, and the other part to that is, I had a coach, and just to seal it on that, but and we were talking about a certain coach, another Power 5, I think they're number 12 or 13 or something in the nation, talking to him yesterday, and he tells me he took a kid off of his recruiting list because the parents were posting negatively about that sixth grader, about the school that committed the sixth grader, and that he is extremely close friends with this coach. And that he didn't like some, and I went and I read some of the stuff that mom had posted, and he made it very clear, hey, we're recruiting 1 year ahead of that. Does that make us bad people? And it's that kid's dog. So what they had figured out was those parents, and parents, I'm not calling you out, I'm just telling you to be careful for your daughter's sake. Those parents don't know how to filter. They don't know how to keep their opinions to themselves. Put yourself in my shoes. If you don't know me, then you may not understand this, but I'm probably one of the most opinionated people you will ever meet.
True.
And sometimes very aggressively.
True.
But I do a very, very good job at not commenting about these things, and even to the point of, I've got a daughter that's a 2023, and I basically have to go hands off and tie my hands up and let her play for the team she plays for, be coached the way she's coached, trained the way she's trained. That's not my team. I need to keep my mouth shut. I'm dad. And so I tell you all that to tell you this. Same thing we were talking about. We wanted to remind y'all, you may have a very strong opinion, and there may be a need for the likes and all the other stuff and the engagement on social media. If you want engagement on social media, post something about cats. That is much safer and apparently is hilarious. So go post something about cats. Do not post something either positive or negative, an strong opinion about a coach, about early recruiting, or anything like that, because over the last 3-4 weeks, I've seen multiple kids lose offers and lose interest from coaches because of things that their parents had posted. And the coaching world is a very small circle. If one coach hears something, we're all going to know about it. Or the same thing is if we're looking at a recruit and one of us happen to see a negative post from a parent, we're going to hear about it some way, somehow. So, yeah, exactly. It is a small circle, so just be careful what you say, how you say it. Again, going back to the argue to understand not to be right. There's no right or wrong. There really isn't. It's just a matter of understanding and do your research. If you're going to come out and come back with some stats and rules and this, that, and the other, you better do your research. You better be sure that what you're putting out there is what the rule is or is what you know is true. Exactly. And so, that being said, if any of y'all have any questions about that, by all means, again, make sure you comment your questions, let us know how you feel about that. Maybe you've ran into that situation or maybe you were the person in that situation. Make sure that you're commenting and let us know. Aside from that, guys, I'm really, really pumped about this. We previously on the previous show had intended to talk about the new box rules, and me and Mandy were talking earlier. I don't even know if you call it box rules, but that's what we're calling it. It's basically, we are actually not just the box rules, but
I guess the batter's box rule.
There we go.
Batter's box rule.
But what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and add Emily Allard. And while we're adding Emily Allard, I will go ahead and let y'all know, basically, and I printed it out so that Emily didn't get upset with me. But those of y'all that don't know, Emily Allard, and I may even be pronouncing her last name, like we talked about earlier, Emily is our go-to when it comes to slapping. Emily is our go-to. A lot of people don't know Emily is not just the marketing director with the NFCA. Emily is not just, the co-owner of Be the Momentum, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. There she is. Now we got a good looking show. So,
look at that.
And so, but aside from that, we actually have one of the chief things was the new. And before I talk too much, Emily, tell us, everybody knows and everybody's seen that infographic that was posted where, like me and Mandy were talking about, it used to be as long as you had the foot on the line, you were good. Now you're not. What do we need to know about that and how did that come about?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. And I love what both of you have said about all of your topics so far. So thank you for your input on that. The new rule basically states what used to happen is that if any part of your foot was touching chalk, you were considered in the box. So 7/8 of your foot could be out of the box, but if your heel was touching chalk, you were still considered in. And so now what they've said is that if any part of your foot is outside of that chalk line, you are now automatically out. So you can be on the chalk line, but the second that goes over or across, you are now an automatic out. And obviously the biggest thing for slappers is, they're the ones that are the biggest culprits. But think about how many right-handed hitters you have that step across the plate on an outside pitch, or, any type of situation where your foot is outside of the box is now a red flag to the umpires and a problem for college softball.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, which I know there's varying opinions. Me and Mandy were talking about this. Used to, obviously when slapping became, all the rage, everybody's at the back of the box. Then all of a sudden there was this movement to start at the plate so that you could disguise what you were doing a whole lot better. Do you foresee, obviously, your opinion, I thought more than my own in this. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But with this, do you now foresee people shortening their cross step, or do you foresee people moving to the back of the box?
Ideally, in a perfect world, your slapper's footwork should be rock solid. And so the college coaches that I've talked to, they're either on one side of the spectrum or the other. One side is that they've talked about this rule backwards and forwards. They have re-engineered their footwork and they're anal about making sure nothing happens. And then on the other side, you have, well, my slapper shouldn't be stepping out of the box anyways, so we're not really concerned about it. And until the umpire starts to call it consistently, we're not going to worry about it at all. So it kind of depends on who you talk to. For me, I don't think it necessarily depends on where in the box from catcher to pitcher you start. If anything, I would back a half step off the plate. I think the biggest incident that you'll see is slappers stepping across or righties stepping across. I'd say very rarely outside of being fooled on a changeup do you see slappers outside in the front of the box towards the pitcher. So I would have my kids stay as close to that front corner as they possibly can and just keeping an eye on where that foot lands outside towards the other batter's box.
One of the things that a couple of other coaches mentioned, and then ironically, when I was talking to Mandy about it earlier, and I want to hear what you have to say, like, she was talking about in her coaching days, anytime they would give her, tell her that, the kid was out of the box, Manny would have.
My first thing I would always ask the umpire very nicely, I do that. I would ask, the first question would be, was it a ball or strike? And if the umpire could answer that, yeah, there was a few more words that came after that. But,
Yep.
You can't call both. And so I guess, first, thank you for what you do for this game and how you've developed your slappers, and I love everything you got going on, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
But where did this come from? Is it from the slappers and the concern of them being so out of the box? Because I can't really see that the right-handed hitters really had a whole lot to do with the change. Where did this, I guess, stem from?
That's a great question, and I'm not really sure if anybody knows the answer. I think slappers have become a huge part of the game, and I'm obviously very, very biased, and I understand that. However, I think that the momentum that they create and their ability to just put the ball in play and be safe, it can terrorize a defense. And I think that you're seeing that more and more as the game gets better and slappers get better. So my guess is that they tried to find a way to eliminate any, fuzzy boundary. And so I think, coaches get a survey and rules go out, and if you don't answer it, rules are put into play. So, but I do agree with you that home plate umpire, their first job is balls and strikes. So I'm actually very curious to see how much it's called this year. You could arguably talk about illegal pitches as well. That's a rule. How many times does that get called on a consistent basis? So I think it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out over the course of its first year, and if it is actually going to be a factor.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, are they going to redraw that front line every half inning, 2 innings? Where we go? Because you and I both know that line's out within a matter of an inning and a half.
Totally agree. And my rebuttal to that would be, are the pitchers' lines redrawn after the second or third inning? And your guess is as good as mine. So I would imagine that the coaches on both sides, and again, this is just my personal opinion, it's going to be fair whether the line is there or the line is not. So if the lines happen to be erased, the advantage still goes to both sides. So I don't know.
Don't be surprised that umpires stop and ask for it to be redrawn, because I have seen that happen with the pitching lane. So
yeah.
I hope people have upped their budget with the chalk, the line, getting enough bags of chalk this year, because there's lines to put down.
I don't know if it's the chalk. It's probably the labor that'll cost them the most money.
Well, and that's what, talking to a couple of the other coaches, they actually brought it up and they said, when they're going to try to watch, is it a ball or strike? Was she actually out of the box? What are you going to do whenever you're at these turf fields that don't have to have it redrawn, but at the same time, he can still only watch one thing. And so I've had a couple of other coaches say they anticipate that if everything with it sticks, possibly ending up adding staff, adding another umpire to where they're, so now I don't see exactly, because if you have one on first and second, and you have a slapper in the box, now all of a sudden, there's way too much to be watching here.
Yeah. I don't know. The same thing goes for me with a runner on second base. I mean, everybody from the earliest age is taught to leave early because no one's watching. So I think there's a lot of aspects of the game that are part of the game because there's no eyes to be everywhere. And I think that's something that we should protect, in my personal opinion. I can't imagine there being more umpires. There's times where all three of them can't get the right call. Everyone's been a part of that. So I don't know. I think there's just, it is what it is. It's human error. It's part of the game. You can have reviews and, all that kind of stuff. I know technology is becoming a big part and the discussion at the higher levels as well. So I think it's all trial and error, and I'm really curious to see how it goes, in all honesty.
So I have another question, which is kind of related to that, kind of not. Maybe we're talking about. So one of the things a lot of people don't know, they know you're the slapping guru. They know you're the go-to when it comes to slapping.
I didn't come up with that name, by the way, just FYI.
What they don't realize is, and I don't remember the exact verbiage, but that, all the different records you hold for base running, for stealing. And so I find it odd that over the last couple of years, what I've heard, and you've probably definitely heard from the upper echelon coaches, has been These kids come and they know how to field, they know how to throw, they know how to hit, they know how to do this. None of them know the first thing about running bases correctly.
Yep.
And so, like, and maybe you can help lead that into, as we talk about building momentum, but I know it's focused on training slappers, but what should these, because obviously you can't help everybody all at once, what should travel coaches and these high school coaches be teaching their kids? What should be their dailies, as y'all used to call it? I don't think a lot of people are aware of the records that you set at Northwestern and what you did in the NPF, prior to it.
It's a great question, and this is where I kind of have to give a lot of credit to the travel ball organization that I played for. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sorcerer, but back in the day in 07, 08, 09, Phil Muma was our head coach. And the best thing that he ever did for us, in all honesty, was he allowed us to make our own decisions. And after every at-bat, every play, every out, every safe, we had a conversation about what we saw, why we chose the decision that we did, and would we choose it again, basically. But it was one of those things where he wanted to foster an aggressive base running environment, but we were never punished for being aggressive. And so I think I see that a lot of times when I'm giving clinics is these coaches are preaching aggressiveness, and then the second their kid goes for it and she's out, she gets yelled at. And you have to understand that young girls respond very negatively to that. Like, you told me to take that risk and I did, and it didn't turn out that way. So now when you yell at me, I'm never going to make that decision again. And so I think that is what I have seen that has really hindered the base running game. So for me, what I tell all my kids is we could see the same situation 17 different ways. So when I'm asking you what you see, I just want to know what you saw versus what I might have seen. And there might be 3 different tools that you could use that are all correct. It's just about which one you executed, what you decided to, what hole in the defense you decided to get to, and just having those types of conversations and teaching kids to think for themselves. I think coaches have turned these athletes into robots because they're telling them what they see. You should be enabling that conversation to know what she saw. And I think that's what turns me into the savvy base runner that I was, because I wasn't born that way. I just came up in an environment that allowed me to think for myself and make my own decisions and then learn from my own mistakes as I went.
I dig that. I mean, my dad used to say that they need to put a sundial down to see if I was moving, so I am not a base stealer by any means. But I can totally dig what you said about, teaching them the why. Why did you do that? What did you see? Not just coaching from an aspect of do what I say. That doesn't help. That doesn't really grow that softball IQ that we were looking for when you give the kids the freedom to succeed and to fail, and to teach them the whys behind not just the what. Don't just tell me what to do, but understand the why. I totally dig that.
Right. And I think that goes for all skills too, because I just see a lot of coaches saying, get your throw lower. You have to get your bunt down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're making all these observations. And I'm like, okay, well, did you tell her how to do it? Like, did you tell her how to make that adjustment? Because if she knew, she probably would have made it already. So you pointing out what she's doing wrong isn't helping her get better and make that adjustment to get you the result that you're looking for. So I think just having those conversations with your players and allowing your athletes to think for themselves in all aspects of the game will help them build that softball IQ.
Well, so, and I mean, of course, an addendum to that question, one of the in my days of coaching, and not saying that it is right or wrong, or down the middle, but I maybe sometimes put too much trust in my slappers, and it may not be the right way, but based on how I had my stuff structured, some of my more skilled kids in the left side of the box, I had a call that was basically, I trust you, was what it basically was, you do you. And basically, it was their job. Read what you see and read what's over there, and you do what you do. And I got that, and of course, later on, I'd have righty hitters say, well, you never tell me that, this, that, and I'd have to explain to them, well, you don't have 75 different things that could be possible, and so I had my slappers, and sometimes they would make mistakes, but then, whenever they'd come back, before I would say what went wrong, they'd say, I knew, da-da-da, and I never had to ask that question. But later on, of course, there was always this differing opinion of, no, you're the coach, you should be laying it down on whether they should be doing this or this. And then there was other ones saying, no, I dig the freedom, this, that, and the other. And it was more or less me making sure that they trusted themselves. If and you and I both know, as a slapper, no matter what you know how to do, your entire arsenal, that week on T-work and on everything else you've been working on, something that was looking really good all week and something that just ain't working right. So naturally, if I turn around and call that thing that ain't working right, your nerves shoot up through the roof. You're like, oh crap. So that's where I learned to, when I turn around and ask, one of the kids, hey, you and I both know that was a perfect situation for a drag. Why didn't you drag? And she told me, to be honest, coach, I don't know what's been going on this week, but this, that, and the other. Hey, I dig it. You knew it. I trust you.
I think you just had a question from Rick Thomas for you, Emily. I don't know if you can see that up there, that question.
About your records that you have with stealing, and were you always naturally quick, or what was there, different drills that you actually used, different strength exercises? You were always quick, but what really took you to that next level?
Yeah, so I definitely was one of the fast kids when I was younger, for sure. But when we got to college, just like really, really good high school seniors start at ground one when they get to college, no matter how highly touted they are. Well, I thought I was really fast, and then I got to college, and I wasn't so fast anymore. So I think it's both, for sure. But what was really interesting is during my collegiate career, but also professionally, they took one look at my running form and was like, do you realize how much faster you could actually be if you paid attention to the little things? So in terms of one or two things, form was a big one. If you even just film your athletes from behind as they're running away from you, you can tell so much about their mechanics, their fundamentals, the big scientific word, their gait, and how their feet turn and what their elbows are doing, and are you moving your momentum in the direction that you want it to go, or are you taking away side to side, all that kind of stuff. So they really videotaped me from the waist down to just really hone in on what my feet were doing. So that was one thing. And then two, you guys know this, softball is all about how quickly you can get off the line. They're all big, short, explosive movements. If any of your athletes, especially your slappers, are running more than 20 yards at a time, you're doing it wrong. You want to make sure that you're working on those short, quick bursts. So we do a lot of fun drills, just trying to get off the line, trying to get those first 5 yards to be as quick as they can be. Big, explosive steps. And again, the only people who should be running long distance, endurance runs, things like that are pitchers. So those things combined have helped me over my career to be a little bit faster than what I was naturally gifted with.
Well, it's interesting that you said gait, because that's, I've actually mentioned that to some of my players in the past, or some of my prospects in the past, and I used to use it as a reference. They would always laugh, there's some of the New Balance stores where it's just a New Balance store, and they have like a podiatrist that's there, and has a treadmill. Well, actually, no matter the age, they'll have the people walk and actually analyze their walking gait in order to determine, do they overpronate, what do they need to do, and what type of shoe is going to fix that. And so, in addition to that, one of the things that I wanted to really, and I don't know if you'll give me an opinion on it or not, but obviously you have a crazy resume that is just, phenomenal. But in terms of not just your previous playing experience and obviously continuing to advise coaches and players, but being such an integral part of the NFCA, with everything being proposed in the caucus, and everybody's now talking about it, but you and I both know you've been hearing about it for years and years, and so now that it's been proposed and everybody's blowing it up on social media, what is your take on it? What is your opinion on early recruiting, and then I guess everything that's involved with the proposal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm very fortunate to wear many different hats within the softball community, and the NFCA has been unbelievable in supporting me as a player and me as an outside businesswoman with Be the Momentum, and me with a full-time job on their staff. So it's awesome that I get to be involved in so many different facets of the game. But my personal opinion, first of all, on early recruiting, when I was 11, I'm not sure if you've gotten a hold of any of the photos I posted on social media, but holy cow, I would have been shunned from all college campuses. Like, I'm talking like buck teeth, skinny arms, hairy legs, like the whole 9 yards. I was the biggest ugly duckling ever. And not to mention, as an 11, 12-year-old, I was a right-handed hitting pitcher. And now, you know, throughout my entire career, I'm a lefty slapper outfielder. So talk about a rude awakening for a college coach to get me, you know, by the time I get to school, I'm not even what you recruited. And so I remember going through the process at 16 and thinking, holy cow, this is a huge decision. And the reason I chose Northwestern is because they didn't sell me on anything. I went on a couple visits where the red carpet was rolled out for me, and they put on a show to try and convince me to come. And Northwestern was the only school that didn't do that. They said, this is a day in the life. This is who you're going to be with. This is real. And on top of that, it was a 40-year decision. It wasn't a 4-year decision. And I think that is getting lost right now in the allure of facilities and the allure of national championships. Like, I am where I am because of my degree, because of the coaches that I decided to play for, because of the teammates that surrounded me. And you don't know who those are going to be really 6 years out, which is nuts to me. So that's my personal stance. As for the NFCA, it's a very, very exciting time to be a part of an organization that's uniting for change. But I also think you guys need to understand that the Coaches Association is an entire body, and even through all the legislation that's being proposed and the surveys that have gone out, it's about 85% majority that are in favor. Now, first of all, that's a huge number to get the majority of Division I coaches to agree on. Like, that's phenomenal. But at the same time, that's not everybody. So I think that gets skewed sometimes on social media because, you know, all it takes is one coach, and you guys all know that. And it's not even the Tim Walton that wins, like you're saying with the 11-year-old kid that just committed. There were 10, 11 other schools that were a part of that. But the problem is, and this is what the NFCA is trying to fight for, is as long as a loophole exists, somebody is going to take advantage. So all of the rules that are written right now, they've been okay for however long, but the big one is the phone call. That loophole still exists for the phone call. So as long as that's allowed, kids and coaches can communicate. So that's one of the main parts of the legislation that's being proposed, is to close that loophole. So now, yes, sure, a 6th grader could commit, but 47 red flags would be raised as to how that conversation happened if the new legislation passes and no recruiting contact is allowed and no phone calls are allowed. So how in the world did that conversation go down? So that's kind of what we're getting at. And on the back side of that, I think it's really important to understand that this is happening for the kids, and the majority, 85% of college coaches, or whatever that number is, don't want early recruiting to exist. However, while the loophole still exists, they still have to recruit to win and save their jobs. So I think that's an interesting dynamic and a tough dynamic for them to be a part of. And that gets skewed a lot over social media for the people, like you were saying earlier, who want to voice their opinions. And to all of them, I say, please, please, please go to the NFCA website and look at the recruiting center that we created that has the facts. And then from there, you can form your opinions. There is so much misinformation that is circulating right now that is inaccurate. And so go to that website, nfca.org. It's called the Early Recruiting Action Center. All of that factual information is there. And then once you read that, we are happy to discuss how you feel about, what's happening. So that was a really long-winded answer. I apologize, but we are all really passionate about early recruiting, and myself as a player and with the NFCA, and I think it's just really important to find the facts.
And a side note to that, to cap that, how important is it because a lot of people in years past, and I think it's just because of the lack of education, but they they have thought of NFCA as a college coaches organization. But I've noticed, here lately, the last several NFCA events, we've had a higher and higher and higher number of attendance from travel ball coaches, high school coaches. How important is it for the high school coaches and travel coaches to, like you keep saying, instead of saying college coaches, you keep saying collectively coaches collectively. And I know in reference, you're meaning all of them need to be on the same page, and it's until they start getting involved with NFCA, it becomes a little bit more difficult for them to really understand the truth and what's true and what's not, right?
For sure. And I think that's a really good point for me to talk about right now is you're absolutely correct. In the past few years, I'd say starting at least 2 years ago and forward, that is exactly what we were seen as, was a college coach organization. And we 100% take ownership for that. And so our biggest goal moving forward, and with our new leadership under our executive director, Carol Bruggeman, it's just been everybody matters. Everybody matters. Every coach matters. And I think what people lose sight of is your high school and your travel ball coaches are the ones that are molding these kids to get them to college. And I wouldn't be where I am today without my travel ball coaches and how they shaped me, challenged me, and got me ready to perform and excel and just be a good human by the time I got to school. So I think what our organization is trying to do is when you're involved with the NFCA, you're on the front lines of information. And I think that's one of our biggest benefits. So the moment that this recruiting calendar was created, an email is sent to all of our membership. This was about a year or two ago. When the Division I caucus was over, the minutes were sent to the membership. When the new legislation was proposed, the travel ball coaches were one of the first people that got access to these facts and information. And it all trickles down. We like to kind of refer to Division I in our organization as the football program of the school, right? You have to have it, and you can't survive without it. And it's the one that is the most visibility and the one that has arguably the most power, the football team. But at the same time, without that in existence, money doesn't trickle down to your softballs, your volleyballs, your wrestling, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where it's at. Like we need them. They're the ones that are pushing, big things forward. But at the same time, we can't discount and forget the travel ball coaches who are on the front lines, the grassroots levels with these kids every single day, especially at the high school level. And that's what we're working towards. And I personally am honored to be the travel ball liaison. So I have taken my own kind of to heart to kind of take this group and run with it. And they've been awesome so far.
So just to cap that, the high school and travel coaches that are watching or do watch this, what do they need to do if they're not currently part of the NFCA? What do they need to do right now? What can they do right now?
Yeah, so on our website, nfca.org, and I definitely don't want this to be a membership push by any means, but you can go and find the benefits on our website. And the biggest one for high school coaches are the All-American Awards, Travel Ball Coaches, Coaching Staff of the Year Awards. If you want your kids to be recognized for Scholar Athlete Awards, our organization runs all of those. So awards are a big part of what we do, but on the flip side of that is the educational piece. And we're a nonprofit organization. We're here for the coaches, and we exist to help you get better so that ultimately your kids can get better. And I think that's been one of our mantras lately is like coaches are preaching all the time for their kids. We want to do this for the kids, but what are you doing for you that's going to help you relate to those kids a little bit better? And so that's kind of what we're here for. So we have Tip Tuesdays that we put out every week with skill drills. We have coaches clinics across the country. We just finished 8 in the month of December and January. We obviously have our national convention. We also release a podcast. We have publications, monthly newspapers. All of those different types of things come with that membership piece. And again, that's all on our website. But it's just, you're on the front lines. You have the facts. You are one of the first people to hear about things. And our network is insanely vast. And I think that's why a lot of people join is, you have instant access to your Pat Murphys, to your Tim Waltons, to your Patty Gassos, Carol Hutchins, right? Like whoever you're thinking of, we have them. We have access to them. We use them for their knowledge, their ability to give back to the game. and it's pretty special to be a part of working for the organization. But a lot of people don't even know our organization exists, and that's a lot of our issues that we face in the office.
Well, and the last thing, which like me and Mandy were talking about, tell us a little bit about with Be the Momentum. Obviously, that's your baby. I know you, like you said, you have a bunch of different irons in the fire, but Be the Momentum, obviously, not just because it was you, and I trust what you say in that avenue 100%, but you're taking a really largely different approach in being and let's be honest, and hopefully nobody gets mad at me when I say this, but the number of people coast to coast that can legitimately teach slapping is so low that's the reason whenever somebody says I have a slapper, what they mean is she knows how to hold the bat and step across the bag and lay down a bunt, and then that's it. And so whenever they say slapper, that's why our second question is, so what all can she do? And, and no, what, 50% of them can't even hit away from the left. But yet, all this other stuff. So what you're bringing to the table with being able to train the slappers, no matter where they're at, tell us how does that work?
It's a great question. I have fallen in love with the neglected parts of the game throughout my career. Slapping, base running, outies. Everybody knows the outfielder just run for your infielders during practice. So that's basically what I grew up with. And long story short, my best friend Kristen Sharkey and we gave a clinic in Minnesota to help one of my Bandits teammates open her new facility. And it was a slapping clinic, and the numbers got a little bit higher than I ever anticipated. So I called Kristen and was like, hey, can you come help? Long story short, we had a blast. It was awesome. And the parents were so surprised at the instruction that we gave and the price that we gave it at. We actually had parents when we left say, you should have charged double for what we just took our kids through. And we were like, we didn't even, we're just here because we love slapping. Like that didn't occur to us. So from Minnesota to Chicago, our 6-hour drive home, we put together a business plan and was like, I really think that we could do this. This would be really fun. So anyways, we had nothing. Like, we didn't know about taxes. We didn't know about anything. And we were like, you know what? We're just going to start a business, see what happens. So anyways, fast forward 3-4 years later, and here we are. We've been to, 12, 13, 14 different states. We've worked with hundreds of slappers. And basically, it just revolves around the fact that your role is important. And I think a few years ago, slappers are often neglected, and it's just one of those things, like if you don't hit the ball over the fence, you don't matter. And, how many times do you just throw your slappers into hitting practice and say, well, just slap when you get to that drill? And so we're just trying to find a place where we could empower these girls that have been neglected and are neglected, and give them advice and tips and drills and things that they can work on and keep busy and stuff like that. So Kristen and I love the kids, and our clinics are our number one thing. It's what we do, not because we make money, but because we get to be hands-on with them and allow them to see, slappers in real life. We've been there. We've had their same thoughts. We've thought those same things. I'm still fighting those same things. So that's kind of how it all started. And then it just took off and grew, and we've developed a pretty good following, and we just keep going every day. But Chris and I both have full-time jobs, and she's an editor for a magazine. I'm obviously with the NFCA, and it's just it's like our little side chick, So I wish we could dedicate, 40 hours a week to it, or be gone every weekend, or fly here, fly there. But, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, we gotta pay the bills and create some more change in a different way. So it's been fantastic. We love every second of it. We have 2 clinics coming up in Wisconsin and Iowa. We can't wait. And, we just go with it.
Those clinics that you have left, those are listed on your website?
Yeah, so BeTheMomentumSoftball.com is our website, and then we're on social media. Twitter and Instagram is @BE_the momentum, and then Facebook, I see you just posted that, thank you. But yeah, so you can find us there, and we respond to anything and everything. So holler.
Awesome. God, first of all, I want to thank you. I know Mandy, we tried to act as if we weren't super excited about having you on the show. So like, we tried, oh yeah, we're all good. We're all buddies kind of thing. But like,
we are buddies.
The minute you stop learning, you die. It doesn't matter what career you're in. And so like anytime I have the chance to pick your brain, I get uber excited. And so like when I'm talking to Mandy, she's like, so I want to ask her this. I want her to talk about this, this and this. And I'm like,
we gotta have you back.
Yeah.
We gotta have you back.
So we definitely got to have you back. And again, I'll make sure, or you can, if you don't mind, as soon as we get done, as soon as you hop off, comment in the section. Let everybody know, because I know me personally, I've had some of my prospects tell me that they watch you on Twitter. But then, I see most of your videos on Instagram, the little clip. And then, but I know Mandy's been watching you on Facebook. And so, regardless of which avenue it is, if you will comment, let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure.
Definitely appreciate you being on, Emily, and we look forward to having you back on.
No, thank you. I appreciate you, and the best thing I can say and admire is that you want the truth, and you want the facts, and you want to make sure that you're spreading good information. And I think that your kids and your players will thank you for years to come. So it's awesome to be around people who like to continue to learn. And I know that people like to pick my brain about slapping, but I hope they know that everywhere I go, I'm asking those same questions to be able to continue to, lead the way, quote unquote, in the slapping world. So I appreciate you having me. It was great to talk to you, and I will be back.
Thanks. Keep up the good work, and good luck to with Be the Momentum.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just going to hit this X and hope that does the trick. Is that good? All right, great. Bye, everyone.
And guys, with the rest of y'all, while y'all are, as soon as the show is over, if you go check the comments, if Emily doesn't, I will. And no, just so y'all know, there is no endorsement dollars or anything coming from Be the Momentum or NFCA. I'm telling you these resources and then begging Emily to come on the show because these are resources that we use as scouts working in recruiting and working in softball every day. And these are the ones we trust. And not just because they don't tell you something unless it's factual. Like there's times I've asked Emily something and she won't give me the answer because she doesn't know right that minute. But she'll direct me to who has it. And these are not just people that we trust. These are people that we want to make sure that, like she said, you're getting the right information. Aside from that, questions in the comments. I believe we've addressed all of them. Guys, I appreciate all y'all being on for episode 2, dose for Gilbert Ornelas down there in South Texas. I appreciate all y'all being on. And if our next episode is Tuesday, February 20th. And again, if you have an opinion, this is one of those times, contrary to what we said, we do want your opinion. Comment on this video and let us know. Do you think it should be Tuesday? Do you think it should be Wednesday? Do you think it should be at 6:30? Do you think it should be at 8:30 or 9? Either way, we could care less.
It's about you. We want to know what you want, what works best for you and your families.
So make sure and comment. Let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next turn. Thanks, guys.